Hermit. He was not the founder father, but he's the main patron of the monks, St. Paul the First Hermit. The monks were white habits, right? The order originated in Hungary, and the first monks who came here in 1382 were Hungarians, right? So they started the history in here. 2 years after their arrival, the icon came. They built a special chamber for it, as they called it, right? A chamber for Our Lady. And this is this part of the chapel. In 1650, one of the Polish politicians, right, Chancellor, he offered this ebony altar to the chapel, and there we have now the icon of Our Lady, tabernacle, altar for the Mass, but also, number one, you can see, it's a sash. It brought John Paul II had on him when Arianka tried to shoot him in 1981. What's more, it's with stains of blood, John Paul's blood, you can see there, right? So it's the most precious relics after John Paul II, right, that we have in here. Then, number 5, these are royal insignia of Our Lady, because she's Queen of Poland, right? From the year 1656, this is when she was proclaimed Queen of Poland by Polish king, right? And as such is praised in Poland, and especially in this place. These royal insignia were offered by Polish women to thank Mary for one of the greatest victories that we had in the 20th century in 1920, when our army faced Bolsheviks in the eastern part of Poland, right? And they were successful. They defeated Bolsheviks, right? That was a miraculous event, you know, because our troops were much smaller, and all the coincidences worked together so that our army was victorious, right? And saved Europe, right, from communism for 20 years. Unfortunately, later communists came back because, as you know, in 1917, Mary appeared in Fatima. She gave her message, right? Hardly anybody listened to her, right? And we had the consequences, just as she said, that there would be a worse war, right? So we had the Second World War, and then the spread of communism, right? This Russian invasion on Europe. Right. So, but 1920, interesting thing, you know, that this event, the miracle on the Vistula, the main battle, victorious battle, was on the 15th of August, which is the Assumption, and that's the main feasting here, right? What's more, 2 weeks earlier, on the 27th of July, Poland, by bishops who gathered here, was consecrated to the most sacred heart of Jesus. So we see how these things go together. And we know that when Jesus appeared to Margaret Maria Kolbe, right in France, he told her that the French king, should consecrate France to his heart, right? To Jesus' heart. The king didn't do it. And what did we have? Revolution, right? The French Revolution, and massacre on the Polish church, on the French church, right? So we see how we should simply follow what Jesus gives us, right? Take what He gives us, right? As I often say, I start, you know, thinking that way and living this way, saying that whatever God gives you, if you want to please Him, just take it. Right? Take what God gives you, right? Okay, and then on the other side of the altar, we have 3 golden roses. This is a gift from popes. So popes give such, for years, for centuries, they have been giving such distinctions to places and people. And in 1979, Pope John Paul II came here, right? And he offered the rose number 2, right? That was his first pilgrimage as Pope to Poland, right? And the rose came with him. Then Pope Benedict XVI was once here in 2006, and 2016 Pope Francis also once, so number 4 from him. Golden roses stand for the risen Christ, right? And have been placed here in the altar of Our Lady. Now, this altar, just as many old altars in Poland, allows us to walk around the altar, right? So we will behind Our Lady, right? And pray. Polish pilgrims, when they come, they do it on knees, right? Yeah. So walk around on knees and pray and leave all your heart with Our Lady. She knows what is in there, right? She sees what is in there, just as she saw in Cana. Because this painting, when you look at it on the left, you meet her eyes. You look from the right, you meet her eyes. You're in front, you meet her eyes, right? She is the one that sees what we need, right? And helps, right? And helps. That's why in the second part of the chapel, you can see votive offerings on walls. They say about 11,000 of them are hanging, right? And some of them are crutches. Yeah, maybe you have already noticed crutches hanging on the wall, right? People simply didn't need them after prayer in here, right? Yeah, so we have such amazing stories here, thousands of them that are written down, there are films with testimonies of the people who are so graciously, gifted, right? So that's the second part of the chapel. And then the third part of the chapel, it's the first that you enter, it has this nation here, right? Because that's the national shrine of Poland. Poland meets here, right? And there you have votive offerings regarding the Second World War, right? And solidarity movement. In 1980s, Poland had to strive for freedom with communism, right? With communistic regime. Not only 1980s, but that was the peak time, right? Solidarity movement then emerged, right? And in 1989, we could enjoy free Poland, right? So such a success, although with many victims of that time, many people killed, and among them one priest, not one, many priests, but one, the most famous, the leader of spiritual leader of solidarity movement, Jerzy. I'm going to take you to one of the stations of the cross that we have here, which show the history of Poland united with suffering Jesus. And we'll show you some things, because it's a very interesting station of the cross, right? So, but that's later on. I promised now to take you to the chapel. Maybe one more thing. You see one thing here and another thing there, right? Did your guide explain to you that the icon is a painting on wood and looks that way? But in the chapel, since the 18th century, we have it with a decoration hanging in front, not touching the icon. It's like 3 centimeters away, right? And the decoration has holes for us to see the heads, hands, and Jesus' foot, right? So these parts of the body. So we have the ruby dress, right here, and this is the one that is now in the altar. Dresses are changed once a year after Palm Sunday at night. The change takes place. The one that you see here is diamond, and these two are the oldest ones, right? The oldest dresses, 18th century, with votive offerings dating back even to the 16th century, right? So such gifts people used to give to Our Lady. Okay, crowns from Pope Pius X, first papal coronation in 1717, very special date, right? And it was the first coronation outside the Vatican. Okay, to the Basilica then, that way back. Okay. The chapel was too small to gather them all, right? This icon came here famous for miracles, so no wonder it attracted people first from neighboring places and then from all Poland and neighboring countries, right? So that they were coming here for graces through Our Lady. This church was gone with wooden interior. What? In 1690, the freshly built tower, also mostly of wood, got on fire and collapsed on the roof. The roof went down, everything inside burned. Since we had kings and magnates who came here, all the Polish kings from the time of the foundation of this monastery till the end, except for the last one, came here, prayed here, and even had had political discussions, right? So this was really already then in the 17th century, you can say national shrine, right? Bringing also those, upper classes, right? And they simply sponsored the rebuilding of this church, right? So now we have Baroque church because it was Baroque, so beautifully presented till today. This church was in 1906 got the title Basilica, among others because it has three naves, right? The main nave it has to be higher than the side naves, right? But also other conditions. But I'm talking about the naves because in that nave we have side chapels, right? Extra side chapels, and I want to talk a little bit about them. So this one, for instance, is dedicated to St. Paul the First Hermit, the patron saint of the monks. And interestingly, it didn't get on fire, it didn't burn during this big fire in 1690, right? You can see it's black marble, which you can find in Poland, right? So, that's Polish thing. And St. Paul there in the altar. You've got here also, above the entrance, this grate showing two lions, palm and a raven with bread. When you turn, you see the same above the entrance to the chapel. Why? Because that's the coat of arms of the Order of St. Paul. St. Paul the First Hermit lived in peace from the turn of the 3rd and 4th centuries. When he was only 16 years old, he had to stake his life with the persecutions of Christians, who was Christian, and he escaped to a desert and spent there 90 years. What did he make clothes from? Palm leaves. A raven brought a piece of bread for him every day, and lions dug a grave for his body when he died. This is what tradition says, right? And these elements were taken by this new community in the church that emerged in the 13th century in Hungary, hermits, Hungarian hermits who came together to form a community, right? Following a vision one of them had, and maybe I'll tell you the vision because it's important, I think. It was very prophetic. Blessed Eusebius. In 2020, 2 years ago, we had his 750th anniversary of his death, right? And pandemia broke out, right? And people were forced to scatter, right? Live alone, right? Don't be in a community with anybody, right? And what did Eusebius see in the vision? He saw scattered little flames come together to make a huge fire, right? When I realized, that was the vision, right? And we were experiencing something completely, something different, right? I thought, God is trying to tell us something, right? For this moment in our history, right? In this time, right? We have to listen to the saints, right? And to God's words, right? And he gave us this holy person, Blessed Eusebius, who shows us that we have to be in a community because the community has greater power, right? And I often say, Poland would not be, Poland today, like when we had communism, if people didn't get together, right, and didn't form this solidarity movement. We got together in 1980 and started fighting against communists, right? And that was the power, right? So remember to be in a community wherever possible. Okay? Yes, that's the message from Blessed Eusebius and St. Paul, who lived 1,000 years earlier. Right, so the coat of arms of the Order of St. Paul, and then we go further on. Dedicated to Christianity, those who gave their lives for Christ in the first centuries, right? So they rest. These bones, these are bones, each bone is signed in Latin, right? There's a label with the name. Among them there is Saint Anastasia, Saint Valentine. We have the tent, right? It's a tent. And a tent was for Israelites when they were going to the Promised Land, the place where they kept the ark, right? Meeting place with God. What is our meeting place with God? Church. We meet with God in the church, but the church is also a community. You don't have to be in a building to pray, right? And to have God with us. Because Jesus said, where two of you are gathered in my name, I am among them. And it's enough. Right? This is only fact. But churches are special places which give us a special atmosphere, like Jasna Gora. I don't know, but I suppose you feel that the air here is different, right? And the atmosphere, right? It's a different place. So holy. But that's one of the wonders, right? Get some burials and all that. Each brother has his own doctor. There are others right, and what else did I want to say here? You have the eternal lamp, that's a 17th century gift of one Archbishop Greece. And one thing here is that the assumption is not the dedication of this church. It shows us who Mary is for us, right? Why such a veneration for her, right? For the mother who is to take us back to the Father in heaven, right? As Maria Kolbe said, the best form to prepare us for heaven, right? To shape us, right? So, immerse in her. That's why, for instance, the Jasna Gora has a community, a very big community, thousands of people come every first Saturday of the month, yes, to consecrate themselves to Mother Mary, their families, their jobs, and other things, right? So, everything consecrated, entrusted to Our Lady, right? Because she's the one that takes us by the hand and gets to go with us to heaven. Through Mary to Jesus, exactly. Yes. Right. The dedications of the church are in the fresks above us. Here we have this part of the church, St. Helen and the Holy Cross. Right? That's the first dedication, the finding of the Holy Cross. The monks here have special dedication to the Holy Cross. That's one of the centers of their charism, right? So that's the Holy Cross. And about the second part of the chapel first dedicated to Our Lady, her birth, and God revealed in the history of this place. Right, so everything about Mary and the cross here. One more word, if anybody wishes specific, maybe I will say 2 words about the icon, because there was a question from the public about why Black Madonna. Okay, let me tell you, first of all, that 46 years after the arrival of this icon here, there was the first blasphemous attack. And these were robbers, simply who attacked the place, wanted to rob it, but didn't find much. The monks of the time didn't have almost anything, right? Everything was used to build the place. But they had the icon, which was decorated with pieces of jewelry that people were bringing as votive offerings to Our Lady to thank her for graces, to ask for graces, right? When they saw that kind of image, right, what could they do? They grabbed it and escaped with it, right? But horses stopped half a kilometer away from here, as the tradition says, and didn't want to go further on, right? Aha, the icon. We don't need the icon, we need the jewelry. Knives into the hands, and they started tearing off the pieces of jewelry, of course tearing off pieces of wood too, right? What's more, they slashed the icon, right? And this is when they hid the face of Our Lady. And till this day you can see the scars on her right cheek. That's after that event. The icon was left, destroyed in mud in 3 pieces. The robbers escaped, but the monks who followed found the icon and took it to Polish king, to Kraków, right? And you're going to Kraków now, right? And there the icon was restored back to life. It needed repainting, so new image came back after 4 years. Well, changed, but newly painted, right? With those scars on the face preserved, right? Underlined with red paint, and new varnish to protect the painting. And varnish gets dark in time. So the darkness of this icon was caused by this fact. The varnish that had in chemical reaction with oxygen became dark, right? So that's why the darkness, but it's not yet the white, the title Black Madonna is used for that. I'll arrive at that. The scars left on her face, the monks forbid any decoration done to the icon, right, from that point, right? But people still bringing votive offerings, right? So what to do with those gifts, right? And this is when they came up with the idea of those dresses that I showed you, right? So in the 18th century, they made 4 very decorative ones. We are left only with ruby and diamond. The 2 other are gone. And in the 20th and 21st century, more dresses were made. So we have now altogether 12, right? 12 dresses for Our Lady. And now, why Black Madonna? Because during the Second World War, therefore, the Germans who attacked Poland, they came here and they stationed in here, right? And of course, the first thing, check the icon. Is it really the original? Why is it so weird? Why do the Polish people make so much fuss about this icon, right? But the monks were clever and hid the original icon. The icon was in the monastery, walled up, all throughout the war, 6 years in a row. And Germans didn't know about that, of course. In the altar, meanwhile, there was a copy, a very dark copy, almost black, we can say, right? Okay, Germans took it out from the altar, experts looking, nothing valuable, right? They valued it. But they didn't, only one noticed that that was a copy, but he didn't say a word. The rest didn't see anything, right, that it was the copy, right? The icon went back to the altar and stayed there. And Germans started mocking at this icon, calling it Black Madonna, because for them, as racists, right, this black image, really black. You can, when you look at it, it's difficult even to see faces, you know? You have to have special light to see them, right? So they started to mock at the icon, calling it Black Madonna. That's why the title, which people quickly adopted, right? And she's known under this title till this day, right? There's this famous song, I don't know if you've heard, Madonno, czarna Madonno, jak dobrze twym dzieckiem być. Madonna, Black Madonna, how good it's to be your child, and then so on and so on, right? So this song was composed in 1970s, I suppose. It's in 1970s by one of the women who played organ in here, right? So she's dead now. She died a few years ago. Right. So that's the icon of Our Lady.
Sancta Deo Maria, miserere suatas, Jego napały fortuna.
Proszę, opuszczamy kryterium, zrobimy sobie na kapliczę.
Poland, supported by the church, right? In the most difficult times we were supported by the church, and some people say without the church we would not be Poland today, and that's true. Then Poland needs the mother, Our Lady here at Jasna Gora, the national shrine of Poland, also other Marian shrines. Then called to get engaged, people called to get engaged in the matters of the state, of the nation, and of your neighbors. Don't be indifferent like those, centered only on your business like those people there. That's the painter himself. He painted these stations in the year 2000-2001 after 18 years of preparation to paint them. Then the wife as Veronica and other Veronicas. Mercy reveals the image of God in us, right? You have Jesus' image above there on the sheets, right? So in the spirit of mercy, shape the nation. Then be faithful like the dog that waited for its owner for 1 year at the door of a hospital, you know? So faithfulness in all our faults, right? And then get the heart of a child, because only that saves your sensitivity, right? And you don't become used to things, right? You can take compassion and see the essence of life. People preparing to Easter don't notice falling Jesus, right? The one who is going to be crucified, right? We get used to and we become superficial. Then women shape the nation, right? Like the mother, bring up your children, like the mother of God, right? So don't weep over me, but over yourselves and your children, right? Confessionals to come back to the unity with our Lord. The worst fault, third, is the abuse of children. That destroys the nation. When you kill the children, like in abortion, military engagement, but in any other kind of maltreatment or abuse of children, which destroys the spirit. Poland in the center of Europe, open to attacks, paying the price of openness. Like Jesus, he's open, he remains open, he is ready to help, right? He gives himself to us, but we can do everything here, right? So that's the price. And then those who are fighting for freedom and allowed to be nailed to their own crosses like Jesus for our salvation. That's one of the uprisings in the 19th century. That's Maximilian Maria Kolbe, who died in Auschwitz concentration camp, giving his life for another prisoner. You will learn about it in there. And Father Popiełuszko, that spiritual leader of Solidarity movement, who was killed by communists in 1984. He was kidnapped, his body tied, put in the trunk of the car, then he was tortured, and his body was found 2 weeks later in the Vistula River, drowned. And Cardinal Wyszyński, who led the Polish Church from after the war till 1981, when he died, giving his life in an offering for John Paul II, who was striving for life in hospital after the attempt of assassination. He said to God, please take my life, he suffered from cancer, and save John Paul's. And that happened. He died and John Paul II recovered. And he was like the father for John Paul II. They closely cooperated, leading the Polish Church throughout the time of communism. But he was 20 years older than John Paul. Okay, and then, not a part of the stations, we have a painting here showing the proclamation of Mary, Queen of Poland. Indeed, now in Ukraine, the cathedral, the king, our king, kneeling at the altar of an image of the Mother of God, his royal insignia on the altar. He gave all the power in the nation, in the country, into Mary's hands. The Polish saints is holding a cross, right? Simply to showing us that you persevere to the end holding your cross, right? And then you become saved. Jesus laid down into the hands of Mary. And you see the image? Here she's holding a baby in the original image. And here her martyred son, right? Poland laid into her hands. And Polish people who are fighting for Poland. This is Father Kordecki, who was leading the defense of Jasna Gora in 1655, after which successful defense Mary was proclaimed Queen of Poland. And then the last station should be the grave. Concentration camps, the Second World War. Poland laid in the grave, right? At that time, 6 million Polish people died during the Second World War. And then the painter says, no, those who die with Jesus rise with Jesus. So we have this message of resurrection, right? If we continue till the end with Jesus, right, then we will surely be raised back to life. Jesus comes and comes back, reveals himself appears to apostles, right? And we've got the doubting Thomas, contemporary doubting Thomas, and look at this difference. The heart of the child and the reason, right? Love and reason, right? Heart and reason, right? This difference. But as long as you are sincere in the search of the truth, Jesus allows you to touch himself, right? Yeah, that's why we have so many Eucharistic miracles. In Poland recently we had 2008 in Sokółka, that's northeast of Poland, and in more or less west Poland, in central part, Legnica, 2013, right? 2 Eucharistic recent miracles. Yes, with the host turning to body. And then Jesus is with us in the Eucharist, right? So that's the greatest gift he has left to us. His presence in the Holy Bread, thanks to the sacrament of priesthood, right? It's without priests, we would not have the Eucharist. We could not confess our sins, right? So we have to pray for priests, thank God for them, right? And fight for them too. Right? Fight, yes. And then we have the boat, that's the church, the net for fishing others, always the cross leading us, right? And everything is built on the rock, on Peter, right? Paul and Jesus, the whole body of Christ, the church. And the last station now is the ascension, when Jesus goes back to the Father, right? And there he shows us the direction, right? This is where we should focus. And this is where we should be immersed, right? More in the divine than in what is earthly, because as you can see in this scene, here Jesus is mystic. The higher he is, the more concrete he is. Because eternity is definitely more concrete than what is here, right? It will all pass. We will all die. Let's be honest. Right? So everything will pass, but we will have eternity ahead, right? So we have to face eternity. Lift up your heart. Lift up your hearts. We lift them to the Lord by prayer, by visiting holy places, like going to the mountain, right? Mountain, Jasna Gora, is on a hill, and the name is Bright Mountain, right? Right. So we're already up there, right? So this is the message from we can read from those Stations of the Cross by Jerzy, Duda, Gracz. I wanted to show them to you. So really special. Let's know.
John Paul as well. Yeah, so for me, that's my first time.
Okay, and what is the feeling? What do you feel?
It is a great feeling. I've been the happiest moment visiting St. Maximilian Kolbe place, the monastery, and seeing what he has done and how he transformed the place from just being a field, an open ground, to a place that has become a center of pilgrimage as well. And also tracing the footsteps of St. Faustina, how we all can listen to the voice of God and follow the will of the Father. In our simple ways, we don't need to have much, but simply have the ears to listen, and the eyes to see, and the heart to love what God loves. So for me, it has been an amazing experience so far. We arrived on Saturday, and so today is about our third day. We started in Warsaw, and then we came here yesterday, and then we are going to Prague and visit other sites there. So it's been amazing, and I love it here. And it's one thing that I've seen the resilience of the people with the history behind the wars and the oppressions and the suffering of the people. But the people have taught us one thing that we have been taught by Christ, to remain steadfast in hope. And we've seen what hope does, change. And so we are very grateful to the people of Poland for setting up such a great example. Amid suffering and pain, but have always remained steadfast.
And Black Mary.
Yes, the Black Madonna.
Did you know her? This picture,
Yes, I've of course through the spread of the icon, but I had not known why Black Madonna, that's the name, which was very interesting when we got the explanation why Black Madonna. But for me, very interestingly, that how sometimes when we speak ill of other people and think that by speaking less of them or thinking less of them, we will conquer them. But how people have used that name, which was a denigratory name, but they've used it with great purpose, because of the love. They did not see the shaming and the naming of Black Madonna as just a way of the oppressors trying to pull them down, but they've used it to honor me and really not be put down by racism and all the bad that people can do to each other, but realizing what Kolbe is in the lives of people. So It's beautiful. It's beautiful. The icon has a story. The eyes of God. They tell a great story. As well, when you look into the eyes, they almost like they come alive. Like you're looking into another, like exactly another person. So the eyes, and even the face, with the scarred face, it tells us we live with scars. And these scars in our lives, they tell a story. And this story can be a gospel story, just like the cross. Thank you very much. I am a redemptress from the London province, and I live and work in London, but originally from Zimbabwe.
I will. I turn back with a sheet of paper, and you can write down your name.
All right. Okay, that's fine. I will do that.
Good.
Thank you very much. Thank you. God bless. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.